Saving America one entrepreneur at a time, it's the Biz Rap Podcast with your host, Michael Manahan.
It's Biz Rap Radio, the show that celebrates entrepreneurs and small business with your host, small businessman, educator, and author, Michael Manahan.
And welcome to another edition of Biz Rap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan. Thank you so much for joining me. It is my pleasure, of course, to be the host of the Biz Rap Radio Show. We are the show all about small business and entrepreneurs. We're here helping small business people and entrepreneurs do what they need to do, which is to run their businesses, make a profit, take care of their employees, take care of their families, and hopefully send some of that legacy off to your children. Living the American dream. And it's something that I like to talk about, by the way, is that American dream, because it has been perverted, and I'm not sure if it was the media who did it or why it changed. But there's this kind of thing that the American dream is about. I don't know, having a small house with a white picket fence, and then therefore you've achieved the American dream. But really, that is not the American dream. The American dream has always been that you as an individual could come to the United States of America. You could start out at whatever level you might start out in society, and that you could marry, or maybe you brought your spouse with you from another country, but that what you could do is you could work hard, and through your work and through savings and through prudently, if possible, investing your money, you could leave your children better off than you were. In other words, the idea was that your children would be wealthier than you, would perhaps have better jobs, would get better education, and that really was what the American dream was all about. And then somehow that got kind of perverted. It got perverted into this thing. Well, the American dream is a house with a white picket fence, and I'm not sure where that started. But really, it kind of diminishes what the true American dream is, which is this concept that your children can be better off than you were. And that may not sound like much, but it really is a lot. And the reason why is because in many countries in the world, you simply do not have that choice. Moving up the ladder, if you will, is just almost impossible. And while today in Western Europe you can perhaps still do it, and maybe some other countries, Australia and certain other countries, you can move up that ladder. The reality is, when the United States was in its formulative stages hundreds of years ago, you literally could not do that in almost every other country in the world. This is one of the few places where you could come and you could expect to actually accumulate some wealth. You're not. That doesn't mean becoming a billionaire or even a multimillionaire. But if you have nothing, if you have absolutely zero, if your parents left you zero, and you are perhaps able to leave your kids a few $100,000 or $500,000 or $750,000, whatever it is in relative terms. 100 years ago, that might have only been $25,000 or $30,000. But if you're able to do that, give your children perhaps the education you did not have, you are really achieving the American dream. And I come from a family. My father did not graduate from high school. He dropped out of high school to take care of his family and work. My mother did graduate from high school, but she never went to college. So in my family, my generation was the first generation to go to college. And of course, I did not grow up in the United States. I think listeners know I am an immigrant, and I will say a legal immigrant. I came here legally. I got my papers. I did everything that you should do. And I'm very proud and very happy to be an American. I got my citizenship, perhaps, I don't know, it was 10, 12 years ago. But but I still think that in a certain way I am living the American dream. I'm not a billionaire. I'm not a what I'd call a classic rich dude. I'm not one of the 1%ers, but I have certainly increased my economic wealth. It is certainly greater than my parents, and my children will both do extremely well, and I believe they will both do better than I did. And that really, again, is the unique thing about the United States and the American dream. Now, other countries are changing, and of course that's probably a good thing. But the reality is it's funny, we have this discussion, and this isn't a political show, Biz Rap Radio. We're here to talk about business and things that are important to business people, particularly small business people and entrepreneurs. But I don't know if you can completely separate the politics of it from business. The two are very much interrelated. And we're going to talk more about that in this segment or this show today. But you think about it. Donald Trump is talking about building a wall to keep people out, and yet there are countries out there that build walls to keep their people in. Now, just think about that. Take a classic look at Hong Kong. Hong Kong did not build walls to keep people out. China built walls to keep people in, to keep people from crossing over into Hong Kong. The reality is we still have many oppressive societies on this world. A lot of the people live in an impoverished situation. But not only do they live in an impoverished situation, many of them in the world live without the freedom and liberty that we have here in the United States of America. And by the way, that freedom and liberty to some degree goes hand in hand with a capitalist or a free market society. You can have capitalism, I think, without freedom and liberty. But I don't think you can have freedom and liberty without capitalism. I think the two kind of do go hand in hand, and that's a philosophical argument that is maybe beyond what we normally discuss at Biz Rap Radio. But I think it's important to understand that the American dream is alive. It is well here in the United States. I think entrepreneurs are living that American dream, but we are. There is risk to that American dream, and where's that risk coming from? And I think we're sometimes being misled about where the risk to the American dream comes from. You can go out in this world and you can get yourself a job here in the United States. You can work for a corporation, you can work for the government, and if you do that, you can certainly earn money and sock money away and invest some money on the side and do well and leave your children, get them a good education and leave them better off than you were. But there is another route, and that route is the route of being a business owner, being an entrepreneur. And that has really been one of the boons to not only the American economy, but also to our kind of philosophy of life and this whole idea of the American dream. Because the reality is the opportunity to make money in your running your own business is always there. Now, that doesn't mean if you run your own business, you will make money or more money than you could make in a job, but the opportunity is there, and many small businesses do take advantage of that opportunity. They do extremely well, but small business in the United States of America is really under pressure right now for a whole host of reasons. On the one side, we've got the regulatory quagmire that the government, and when I say the government, I'm talking about the local government, the state government, the federal government, the government at every level, the hoops that they are making small business people go through just to be small business people. So on the one side, you've got this regulatory swamp, if you will, that makes it extremely difficult for small business people. And then on the flip side, you have the lack of capital. So the capital markets that used to be very good at providing capital to small business and entrepreneurs no longer provide that capital. It has completely dried up. It is extremely difficult to raise capital for small businesses, and even though we passed the Jobs Act, which was supposed to provide for crowdfunding and other things, what was it now, 5 years ago, that really has not proven to provide the capital that small businesses really need to fuel that the growth of small businesses, which in turn fuels the economy, and which in turn provides jobs for people in this country. So we're going to talk more about all of this when we do come back from commercial break. I'm Mike Manahan, your host, Biz Rap Radio. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Biz Rap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan, and thank you so much again for joining me today. It's my pleasure to be with you, and I don't have a guest today. Normally most weeks I have a guest, but every once in a while I like to not have a guest and actually just give you some of my thoughts and ideas about things that are going on in and around us and things that are affecting the world of entrepreneurship and small business. And again, I stress that we're not a political show here. This is not a show about politics. But at the end of the day, politics and certainly what goes on with our government definitely affects small business people. And I want to talk about a few of those today on the show. And one of the very first ones I'm going to talk about is something that to me I think is just an absolute travesty. And that is the topic of illegal immigrants and how that affects businesses. Now, there's this, of course, kind of narrative out there that every single business in the United States is interested in nothing but super cheap labor, so we're all out there busily hiring illegal immigrants. And look, I'm the first one to admit that there probably are businesses who intentionally hire illegal immigrants because they do want to take advantage of that cheap labor. But I've also worked with a lot of businesses over the years, and I know the philosophy of many businesses is not to hire illegal immigrants, just not even to get involved in that. But the issue isn't hiring illegal immigrants or not hiring illegal immigrants. The issue is some of the things you hear about the expectations put on businesses to vet individuals who are in this country to determine if they are actually allowed to work in this country or not. Now, of course, you've probably heard the politicians touting something called E-Verify. Now, the E-Verify system is a system where you technically put in a social security number that has been provided to you by a prospective employee. Actually, I really have to go back and change that. It's not a prospective employee. You cannot actually use E-Verify until you've hired the person. So the first thing you do is you hire the person. Now that person is an employee of yours, that person is on the payroll. Now you may check their social security number using E-Verify. Well, if the social security number checks out, great, you keep the person on the payroll. Of course, that doesn't guarantee the person is legally entitled to work in this country because, of course, it may be a stolen or a fake social security number. In other words, it's a social security number that is valid, it validly exists, but it does not actually belong to the person that you have hired. Now, what happens if you determine the social security number, when you process it through E-Verify, is not a valid social security number? It bounces back. It says invalid social security number. Well, guess what? You cannot terminate that employee. Yes, that's right. You cannot terminate the employee even though you determine the employee has a fake social security number. By the way, if you do, you could be subject to fines from the federal government for terminating that employee. And I think it's something like up to $10,000 you could be fined for terminating that employee who is using a fake social security number. No, what are you supposed to do now that you've determined the employee has a fake Social Security number, well, according to the federal government and the E-Verify program, now you are supposed to give that individual an opportunity to rectify his situation, his or her situation, and perhaps they made a mistake, they accidentally gave you the wrong number, who knows what, but now you've got to give them an opportunity to come up with a valid Social Security number. And you've got to give them months, by the way. I'm not talking like 2 days or, next week you have a valid Social Security number or you're out of here. No, not at all. You have to give them months and months and months, and they're able to appeal, and you now have just engaged in an absolutely administrative nightmare. You hired a person, you did your best to comply with the rules and regulations, and guess what? You're now screwed. And even if you don't use the E-Verify system, there's something that you as an employer are supposed to complete. It's called an I-9 form. I think most employers are familiar with it. Under an I-9 form, an employee or a prospective employee could provide you with as many as over 30 different pieces of identification. Yes, not just a Social Security number, not a green card, but 30 different types of identification. And it is your job as an employer to be master CIA, FBI agent and figure out if that ID is valid and if it is one of the 30 different IDs a person can provide that should allow them to work in the United States. Unbelievable. And by the way, if you do any of this wrong, you can be subject to significant fines and penalties. As I heard of a business that actually had a bunch of I-9s in their employee folders, and for whatever reason, the payroll clerk who was processing these I-9s had failed to put a date on them. And the company was fined $200 for every single I-9 form that didn't have a date on it. Now, mind you, they didn't prove that any of the employees were illegally in this country, but all they did was they looked at the I-9 forms and they said, hey, you're missing a date, $200. Ding, 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 ding. Away goes the cash register. Meanwhile, and here's the interesting thing, let's say you do hire an illegal. Let's just say, maybe even do it intentionally. The little dry cleaner down the street, the little Korean lady runs the dry cleaner down the street from me, and she needs an employee, and she doesn't ask a lot of questions, she just doesn't want to know. So she hires the first person that comes along, starts paying them, what have you, and she gets raided by ICE. Well, you know what? She could be fined. She could be thrown in jail. She could have her business shut down by ICE. Yet that's the same government that when that illegal person comes into this country will provide that illegal person with medical services, education, subsidized housing, free attorneys, and a host of other benefits. And so, to me, I just see that as a double standard. Why is it that the government expects businesses to be the police officers? It's our job to go out. I mean, the government can't even get the sanctuary cities to enforce their rules and regulations. Basically the local police in places like San Francisco say, basically, screw you to the federal government. We're not enforcing federal laws. No consequences whatsoever. Hundreds of cities across the United States are doing this. They're doing it on the university campuses. But I'll tell you what, if you try doing that as a business and say, no, I'm not complying, I'm not going to bother to get I-9 forms filled out or check E-Verify or worry about whether or not my employees are here illegally. No, if you don't do the work of the federal government, if you don't try and figure out if that person is here illegally, and you get caught, you could be fined, thrown in jail, and your business taken away. Now, if that's not a double standard, and then the government wonders why small business people are frustrated, it's not that we're out there trying to hire illegals. It's just that some of us don't think it's our job to be vetting I don't know, 20, 15, 20 million people that happen to be in this country. We didn't let them in the country, by the way. Small business people, the local dry cleaner, the local gas station, the local franchised McDonald's or Burger King. We didn't let those people in the country. People came to our doorstep and said, we would like a job. Can we fill out an application? Can you give us a try? We'd like a place to work. And what the government is saying to us, they're saying, okay, you as an individual business owner, you have to become a police officer. By the way, you have to do the job the police officers will not do, because the police officers will not vet the people that they arrest to see if they're illegals. In some states and some cities, I believe, the police officers are not even allowed to ask the question. But you, as an employer, you are forced to do that. You're forced to enforce the immigration laws by completing a myriad of complex forms. The instructions on filling out the I-9 form, you can download them, by the way. They're 75 pages long. 75 pages long on how you should fill out a form when you hire somebody to make sure that person is legally allowed to work in the United States. But when the police officers arrest somebody in, say, San Francisco, well, too bad. We don't have to comply with federal law. It's not fair. It's not fair to small businesses. And I'm not saying what should happen in San Francisco. I'm talking about what should happen to the small business people who can be wiped out, whose businesses can be shut down simply because they hired somebody who was not in the country illegally. I don't think it's right, and I think it's something we should stand up for. This is Mike Manahan, Biz Rap Radio, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to Biz Rap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan. Thank you so much for sticking with me today. Hope you're enjoying the show. And Biz Rap Radio, of course, we are the show all about small business and entrepreneurs. And, if you do listen to our shows on a regular basis, you know that we have a lot of experts that can help you with different areas of your business. Everything from marketing to human resources to compliance, taxes, raising capital, social media, just, the story goes on and on, insurance and all different things, financial aspects of your business, all different things that you need to do as an entrepreneur and a small business person to be managing your business effectively. And the great thing is that every one of our shows, these experts have wonderful, wonderful ideas that you can put into play in your business right now, and they're free. Yeah, that's it. You can listen to the show for free. You can listen to the experts' advice. You can jot down the great ideas that those experts have, and you can implement them in your business, and it doesn't cost you a dime. Now, a number of people who appear on the show from time to time also sell their services. They have different services they provide, whether it's a website development, social media, whether it's marketing, graphics, whether it's financial services, accounting services. And, if you need those types of experts, by all means, give the people who appear on the Biz Rap Radio show a call. But even if you don't need those services, or you don't want to pay for them, or you're not prepared to pay for them, just by listening to our shows, you get 45 minutes of solid information in a field that you should know something about as a small business person and as an entrepreneur. Great ideas that you can implement right away and that you can use to make money and hopefully make more profits in your business, or just to make life easier for you. Make it easier for you to do what you do, because it is not easy running a small business. It is not easy being an entrepreneur. And I sometimes get a little miffed at the attitude of some people, and I'm not going to specifically point to any people, but I've heard this so many times. I've known entrepreneurs who have struggled for years and years and years and worked out of their basement, worked 10, 12 hours a day, barely scraped by, making less money than they could make if they went out and literally flipped burgers at McDonald's. And then all of a sudden things start to click. Things start to work for them. Things come together. The idea they had, the concept they had, its time is right. The years they've spent developing it and working to launch it are paying off. Finally, they're starting to make some money. And, maybe they go out, they buy a new car, they buy a new house. And then I hear people say, well, he or she got lucky. Didn't they get lucky? No, those people did not get lucky. Those people put in years and years of basically starving and living off of credit cards and money borrowed from relatives to get their business off the ground. But not only do certain people discount the value and the effort that those people have put in to build their businesses, but the minute they start to make money, well, guess what? Now they're a 1%er, and the government wants to come after that money. Now you think about it. You could go start your business, I don't know, for let's say 5 years. You make 30 grand a year, about the same you could make, pretty much make working at McDonald's. In 25, 30,000 a year, you're basically making just enough money to, pay your rent on some cheap little room you're living in. And finally the business clicks and you go out and you make 500 grand. Guess what? The government's going to take half of it. Yeah, that's right. You make 500 grand after starving to death for 5 years. You make 500 grand and the government takes half your money. Now, what is right about that? Why is that fair? I always hear this term, pay your fair share. You should pay your fair. The politicians get up there. Oh, you should pay your fair share of taxes. Well, how do you calculate a fair share of taxes anyway? I mean, that's about almost an impossible thing to calculate. But why is it fair to take somebody who struggled for years and years, barely made anything, been living off of pork and beans and macaroni and cheese, and all of a sudden it's fair to take half the money they're making? I don't get it. There's something wrong with that. Our system is not fair. It's not fair to small business people. It's not fair to entrepreneurs. And it's probably not fair to a lot of other people. But to expect it to be fair is maybe asking too much. But, it's interesting. It's perfectly fair when somebody who is not working takes a ton of money from the government. It's perfectly fair when the government takes your money and pays it and gives it to the illegal immigrants that if you hired, you could go to jail for hiring. But that's all completely fair, but it's not fair that you should keep more of the paycheck that you've earned after sweating and risking your capital and living off of next to nothing for years and years. So, that is, in my opinion, that is not fair. Another thing that's made it really, really tough for small business people these days is the lack of capital. And I happen to know a banker who works here in the ritzy area of Los Angeles, and was talking to him. And he says that their bank, the only people they lend money to are, they have a few business clients. They have to be extremely profitable business clients. They've got to have been around for many years, and they've got to be, have a lot of accumulated assets behind them. So they're loaning to those kinds of companies, and they're loaning to very high net worth individuals, people, movie stars, people in the movie industry, sports figures, people who already have a ton of money and a ton of assets. So basically, what it amounts to is the banks really are not lending to small business people and entrepreneurs, because most of them don't have enough of a financial track record or enough of an asset base to garner the attention of the banks. Now, that is something that has changed. I mean, I've been around a few years, but I can remember when you had a small business, you went in, you met with your banker, and the individual banker at your local bank had a fair amount of discretion. He could loan you $100,000 or $150,000 to get your business started. I mean, that has almost died. I'm not sure of any bank that will do that anymore. And again, it seems to be the banks are willing to loan money to businesses that really have the assets and the capital that I'm not even sure they need that money. But they can get that money, and they can get it real cheap. But the businesses that really need capital, the entrepreneurial ventures, the startups, the early stage companies, or that company that maybe had a bit of a wrong turn and is in trouble and just needs that capital to recover, those companies cannot get the capital. So what are they doing? Well, they're getting very high limit credit cards. Yeah, it's nothing today for a small business person to have a $50,000, $75,000 credit card. And they can be paying anywhere from 15 to 30% interest on that credit card. Yeah, think about it, 15 to 30%. You wonder why the banks are making so much money. They're borrowing this money from the Federal Reserve at 0%. And they're not loaning it out to businesses at 5 or 6 or 8%. They're loaning it out to businesses on credit cards at 15 to 30%. And then we wonder, number one, why are these banks making so much money? And number two, why are the small business people struggling? Well, if you have $100,000 and you're paying, on your credit cards and you're paying 30%, that's costing you $30,000 a year in interest. Absolutely criminal. Yet for the small business person, where do you go to get that money? A lot of the traditional sources of capital, as I mentioned, the banks aren't lending it to you. Used to be you could raise what we would call equity capital. There was a lot of small broker dealers who would sell $1 million private placement, as an example. Those are all gone because a small broker dealer, the cost of compliance and reporting to the federal government and insurance and all of the rest, you can't make enough money selling $1 million private placement, so they just stopped doing them. So the flow of capital to early stage companies and small companies has really, really dried up. It's become very onerous in the form of really tough credit cards that, by the way, these credit card companies cancel left and right for the most frivolous of reasons, and we'll talk more about that. Chase is a big bad guy in that area. You'll cut your credit card off if they found out like 20 years ago you made a porn movie or something, or similar things like that. It just is absolutely ridiculous. Just cut your credit card and your credit lines off and you're screwed. Even pull your merchant accounts where you take credit cards. So getting capital for small businesses has become extremely difficult. Anyways, it's Mike Manahan, your host, Biz Rap Radio. We're talking today about some of the challenges small businesses face. Thank you so much for joining me, and we're going to be back right after these commercial messages. And welcome back to Biz Rap Radio. It is your host, Michael Manahan, and thanks again for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. We've been talking today about some of the challenges that small businesses face. We've been talking about regulatory challenges. We've been talking about the fact that the government would like you to be a police officer and do all of this work to ensure the people you're hiring are in fact legal to be hired in the United States when we have sanctuary cities who won't do the same thing, and when those same employees that if you hire them and give them money so they can eat and go to school and get health care, well, you could go to jail and your business could be taken away. But the federal government is more than welcome to take your money from you and give it to those same people for health care and education, and so they can eat. And that seems to me to be a bit of a hypocrisy on the part of our government. I don't know why businesses should have to be doing the job of police officers. We also talked about been talking about the difficulty in getting capital for small businesses, how the banks basically don't lend directly to small businesses anymore, but they're more than happy to give you a $50,000 credit card and charge you 15 to 30% interest on that credit card. How we used to have small broker dealers that would do a fundraising for a business, maybe a little equity capital or convertible debt, and those broker dealers have all but disappeared due to the high cost of complying with the regulatory rules and, from the Securities and Exchange Commission and the various state securities bodies. So it has become very difficult for small businesses to get the capital they need to operate. And I wonder if that has a relationship with why we have been so slow to come out of this last recession. The last recession was our recovery has been one of the worst ever from any recession since they started to record this information, way back when, 150 years ago or something. And why were we so slow to come out of the recession? What went wrong? And I've heard, various pundits say, well, the government didn't provide enough stimulus and this, that, and the other thing. But I have to believe part of it was because we were not able to flow money into small business enterprises, and therefore those small business enterprises could not create jobs. And historically, the reality is, as we come out of recessions, most new jobs are in fact created by small businesses. It's not big corporations creating those new jobs. Quite frankly, a lot of those big corporations do the opposite. They lay off people. All you have to do is read the Wall Street Journal, and it's 10,000 people here and 15,000 people here getting hacked. But small businesses do provide most of the job growth, and most of the people in the United States, in fact, do work for a small business enterprise. So perhaps that's one of the reasons why we were so slow to come out of the recession, which poses the question: how do we get more capital into small businesses, and what is the vehicle for that? And I think the government recognizes that, because there are many government programs now to help small businesses. We certainly have the SBA, the Small Business Administration. There's a number of loan programs. There's grant programs. And I guess all of that helps to some degree, but my gut feeling is that we would be better off to leave the flow of capital into small businesses to the free markets, and not have basically the government managing that whole process. That's a topic for another day, but with the number of small businesses we have in the United States, the demand to fund entrepreneurial ventures and small business ventures, number one, I don't think the government can do it, and quite frankly, I don't really trust them to do it efficiently and effectively. But that's my take on it. Others may think differently. All that being said, if you're a small business and you can get your hands on some of that government money, please do so. You didn't make the rules, but you can certainly play by the rules. And if the government is providing capital, whether it's a guaranteed loan or whether it's a grant or some other form of assistance, my recommendation is do definitely take advantage of it. You should take advantage of everything as a small business person that can help you as a small business person expand your business, grow your business, make more profits, and basically do a better job of running the business that you have. And if there's a government program you can utilize to do that, by all means you should. And by the way, that speaking of programs to help small businesses, please don't forget that not only the government, but also many, many, many large corporations have preferential treatment for businesses that are owned by what they consider to be disadvantaged or underrepresented peoples. I mean, what that really means is if you're Hispanic, if you're black, if you're a woman, if you're from a member of the military, if you have a business that's in certain economically depressed zones, you can get favorable treatment from not only the government in terms of what the government buys, and believe me, the government is a very huge consumer. The military is a perfect example. Billions and billions and billions of dollars a year in purchases. And yeah, there's sophisticated weapons and stuff like that, but don't forget, the military also buys fairly simple things. I mean, they buy things that they sell at the commissary on the various bases. They sell things like underwear and socks. And so there is an opportunity with the military. There is an opportunity with big corporations. Most of the major retailers, Target, Walmart, Kmart, they have programs that favor minorities, that favor people from the military, handicapped people, but also local. A number of them mandate that they need to acquire a certain number or amount of the goods that they buy locally sourced, and you'll often see that if you go into some of these big retailers, they'll have a section, locally sourced. This is for products that are made and perhaps only distributed within that region or that city. So there are many, many programs you can take advantage of that can help you as a small business person, and I highly recommend that you do exactly that. Again, you don't have to necessarily agree with the rules, but you didn't make the rules, but if you can use them to your advantage, by all means, I think you have an obligation to do so. So final thing maybe we'll mention today is, and again, the show is not about politics, but we do have a new government. Our new government is clearly acting a little bit differently than our previous government. And probably many of you listening, there's probably people on both sides of the fence. Some of you were Trump supporters, some of you were Clinton supporters, who knows, some of you may have voted for the Libertarian candidate. But the election is over, and as a small business person and an entrepreneur, what your job is to do now is to make money. And, if there are going to be changes coming in the way our government operates, that is going to create business opportunities. The government controls, what is it now, 20% of our economy, something like that. It's a huge, it's a huge chunk of the economy, and if you can provide services and or products to the government, you can make a lot of money doing that. They're a good consumer. They buy, they pay fairly well. You don't have to worry about the government going, at least not in the short term, we don't have to worry about the government going bankrupt. They can just print some more money to pay you. So why not consider how your business can thrive based upon the changes that are coming down the pipeline, whether it's serving the government directly or in some way providing a service that helps people with the way the government is changing the way it does things. So, you may not have liked the outcome of the election. As an entrepreneur and a business person, put that behind you and now figure out how can you use the changes that are occurring in government to make money for your business. And maybe that means you have a new strategy, maybe it's a new product launch, maybe it's a new service, maybe you operate in a new geographic region, maybe you come up with something you haven't done previously. But there is opportunity in change, and I urge all entrepreneurs to take advantage of that. There's money to be made out there. Go out and make some. We need you as entrepreneurs. We need you building businesses and hiring people, and you have to keep up a positive, forward-looking attitude in order to do that and to make that happen.
Here at BizRap Radio, we are fixing the United States of America through a fundamental concept that individuals pursuing their own economic interests in free markets will create more prosperity for more people than can ever be achieved through government regulations and a planned economy. I am your host, Mike Manahan. Thanks so much for joining me. We'll be back again next week with another edition of BizRap Radio.